So today I wanted to cover probably one of the fastest growing ways to buy a used car, and that's to use online websites such as like Carvana, AutoTrader, or Cars.com, and we're going to review some of those websites today. This was actually a requested video to review Carvana, but I felt like we should expand further into what actually makes a good car buying website. What should you be looking out for, and what are red flags that should signal that you should probably stay away from that website? And I'll preface by saying I have two quick points. One, I'm not necessarily paid by any different website, and so I don't have an incentive to basically sway you one way or another. All I ask in return is you just hit that like button. I greatly appreciate it. And the second point I wanted to make is that we're going to be talking more from the perspective of a buyer, not necessarily a seller, although we will be touching on that a little bit, but more so from what websites you should be actually buying from. So I want to start on what actually makes a good car buying website and how that directly translates into you saving money. Now, the first thing I like to see in any car buying website is the ability to shop nationally rather than be restricted to some kind of geographical area like a 200-mile radius. And you still may end up buying a car that's within 50 or 200-mile radius, but it can save you thousands of dollars being able to price compare to different geographical areas. So let's say I live in a city, let's say Chicago, and I can basically look on this website and see that if I just drove 300 miles away, I could buy the exact same car I'm interested in, but end up buying it for $5,000 cheaper. That may be worth it to me. But even more so than that, that also means that cars in Chicago are going to have to be more competitive in price, because otherwise everybody's just going to go 300 miles away to that other dealership to buy a cheaper car. Plus, when it comes to the sales price of a car, it's all about supply and demand. So if I live in a city that has a really tight supply of available used cars, then I'm probably going to end up paying a higher price, especially if I live in a big city. But if I have the option of going to some small town where there's not really that much of a demand of cars being bought, but yet there's a huge oversupply of cars, then that's more likely where I'm going to get a great deal. The other huge advantage to shopping nationally is you can be more strict on your criteria for the car you're interested in. Now, you may still end up paying a price, for example, like a transfer fee, but if you really care about getting a particular car within a certain amount of miles and a certain price range and a certain color and all these different criteria that you want, you're going to be able to see that nationally rather than when you're just limited to like a 200-mile radius. You have to keep changing your location to possibly find the car you're looking for, and even then there's a chance you still won't find it. Plus, I like to think of it that the decision is still in your hands. So if I am really interested in a silver Toyota and I don't necessarily see in my area, all I can find is red Toyotas, but I do see one that I can pay a $500 transfer fee and it's a silver that I'm looking for, I can actually make that decision and be happy whether or not I decide to go with that car. I may still end up buying that red Toyota, but at least I know, well, it wasn't worth paying that extra $500. Now, another huge criteria when it comes to the car buying website is to make sure that you're able to inspect the car. So for example, a website like Carvana, you're basically kind of buying the car blind. Sure, you can look at pictures, but you're not necessarily able to get up and close with the car. You're not necessarily able to have a mechanic take a look at it or somebody who's familiar with cars take a look at it. You're basically just relying on pictures alone. I'd also say another huge factor to a good car buying website is what are their guarantees or what are their return policies. There's a lot of websites out there that you're able to buy a car and return it within 7 days, but there's this caveat of you're only allowed to drive at 100 miles. Some places offer 1,000 miles. Some places offer 5,000 miles. That's going to be a huge factor. Even though all of them are still 7-day return policies, that mileage may actually make a huge difference. So make sure to check into that too. Another important factor is how they may have a money-back guarantee and how does that actually work in practice, because some places offer it, but the reality is they hugely push you to just basically trade in your vehicle that you're unhappy with for another vehicle rather than actually getting your money back. Plus, some places will just process it in 3 to 7 days to return your money, but some places can end up taking 30 days for you to get your money back, which when you think about the car buying experience, you really need to have that cash on hand to be able to find the best deals. Now, before I give my actual reviews on different car buying websites, the one thing I wanted to mention is that when it comes to finances, or for example, a car buying experience, I like to think of things of terms and different values, and that there's different trade-offs. So one website that may work for me may not necessarily work for you. For example, I don't necessarily mind negotiating and having to talk my way through negotiating a better price on a car, but some people they really don't like that. They rather have like a no hassle type buying experience. And so if that's something they value and they're willing to pay that premium for, then a website I may favor may not be a website they favor. So here are my thoughts on buying a car from Carvana. When I think about buying food from a vending machine, I don't necessarily think about it in terms of being cheap. I think of it in terms of being convenient. So a website that basically claims to have this vending machine-like car buying experience, I don't necessarily think of it as cheap. So it may not necessarily be the best bargain option, but it definitely does have some factors that are very convenient to a certain set of individuals. I think one aspect that appeals to a lot of people for Carvana is the ability to be approved for an auto loan, even if they have pretty low credit score or even a really bad credit score. They're still able, with just a soft credit pull, which is different from a hard credit pull, which would impact your credit score. They're able to, with that soft credit pull, be able to tell you the estimated down payment that you should be expecting, or the APR, or the interest amount that you're going to be paying on that auto loan. I think an aspect that I don't necessarily like too much as far as Carvana is having to pay a down payment or even any associated fees on a car that I haven't even necessarily physically seen. I kind of look at it as if I went to a car dealership in person right now and I was like, I want to buy this car right here, and they were like, all right, sounds great, pay the $2,000 down payment or $5,000 down payment, and I like the car, and they said, all right, but you won't get it for a week from now. I think I'd be pretty hesitant to leave my money with them. And sure, Carvana does have a guarantee behind their car, so if you're not happy with the car, you can return the vehicle and they'll refund your money, or in some cases, if it's just minor cosmetic damages, in some cases they'll actually reimburse you for that amount, whether it be like $200 to get the upholstery in the car highly cleaned or something like that. They're willing to pay that. But I think the aspect that I don't necessarily like, and if you just read some reviews right now, you'll see this experience with a lot of people, is that currently right now they're actually really backed up, and so that refund process has been taking a lot longer for a lot of people, and I think that makes the whole car buying experience a lot less enjoyable. Just think about not being able to schedule the return of that vehicle for the next 15 or even 30 days, and then once that vehicle is returned, then you have to wait another 10 days for your money to be returned back to you, and then finally now you have the cash to go out there and go find the actual used vehicle you need, and that's a lot of downtime that you don't necessarily want when you're trying to buy a car. But I will say, to Carvana's credit, they are pretty good about resolving different issues. So like I said, if you're not happy with the vehicle, you have a variety of options. It's not necessarily like you have the vehicle and now you have to return the vehicle simply because the tail light is out and you weren't necessarily too thrilled about that. They will reimburse you for that amount, or you still have the option to refund that vehicle. So those are aspects I definitely do like. But kind of related, and why I don't necessarily like Carvana, is pretty much everybody in their first case experience with buying a car from Carvana, they'll say that the first car that arrived to them, it came with minor scratches that they didn't see in the picture, and it just kind of seems like there are little minor mistakes that aren't necessarily caught or mentioned in the description at all or shown in any pictures. And I think that makes people a little weary when they're buying this car, that Carvana claimed to be in perfect condition, it arrives to you and there's scratches all over that seem obvious to you. So then you start wondering what other obvious issues are there with this vehicle that supposedly Carvana would have caught, but maybe they didn't. But there is something to be said about Carvana caring about its reputation and trying their best to correct issues. And sure, you would see a lot of negative reviews on pretty much any car buying website, because the reality is people get so hung up on the car buying experience that even if there's just one mistake that they're unhappy with, they're going to write a 1-star review. Nobody out there is writing 3-star reviews on CarMax or Carvana, because if they're unhappy with the vehicle, they're completely unhappy. They're not necessarily in this middle ground. Or if they're satisfied, they're super satisfied and they're going to write a 5-star. But most likely, even if they are satisfied, that's kind of the minimum expectation. If I go to Carvana and I'm happy with my purchase, I don't feel the need to write a 5-star review about them, because in general, that's what I expect from a car buying website. Now, the next website I want to cover is CarMax. And in terms of, if you care about stability, reputation, convenience, those types of factors, and you're willing to pay a premium price for it, then I think CarMax would be the website for you. And personally, I like to use this website more as a base level price for different things. So if you think about it in terms of a seller, if I'm looking to trade in my vehicle, I will pretty much always go to CarMax and basically see what the trade-in value of my car is, because then I know that that's the lowest offer somebody's going to give me on my car. So if I get offered $1,000 on my Toyota at CarMax and I go to a different dealership that's supposed to be more reputable or perhaps more niche towards Toyotas, and then they end up offering me only $500 for that Toyota, then I know that's probably a car dealership I don't want to go with. So the same could be said as far as CarMax from a car buying experience. If I look for, let's say, a Toyota with specific criteria and I see it listed on CarMax's website for $20,000, if I go to any other website or any other dealership and they're offering that same type of car with the same criteria for any more than $20,000, then there's probably a good chance you're being a little bit ripped off. Now, another reason why I really like CarMax's website is because you have this ability to search nationally. CarMax has a huge inventory of vehicles, so you're basically able to kind of explore around. It's a good starting point when you're looking at that car buying, what you're interested in terms of a used car. You can search by a lot of different criteria. Like I said, they have plenty of different brands or makes offered on their website. And not only that, but there's a good chance that they have a local branch near you that you can actually go check out that vehicle. Now, if we take a look at this chart, we can actually see, depending on different cars, CarMax isn't necessarily always the most expensive. In some cases, it can actually be slightly cheaper than other websites. I think the big appeal to a lot of people for CarMax is the familiarity. You see the signs when you're driving down the road, you see the commercials. There's probably a good chance you actually know somebody who's bought a car from CarMax. So because you know about their brand, you feel a little bit more confident buying a car from them. And if that's something you care, that's totally fair. And that's, something you're going to pay a little bit more for than, say, a different website or buying from a private seller. And CarMax does boast this whole idea of no negotiations in terms of price. And that may appeal to a lot of people because a lot of people just get stressed out when they have to negotiate, car buying price. But just be aware that you are paying a premium for that convenience. And I should also say here too that there's a lot of websites out there now saying no negotiation on their prices or no hassle pricing, and that may be seem nice and genuine from a lot of companies' perspectives, but the reality is they do it because then you go in there not negotiating at all. And I can say from experience that I've actually gone into places that say no hassle, no negotiations, and while they will stay kind of pretty firm on their price, there are kind of caveats to that. They will say, well, we'll give you the repeat customer discount, or we'll give you the employee pricing discount. All ways to basically stay true to the no negotiation, but still be able to get me to buy that car. And this is pulled straight from their website, but they do offer a 90-day limited warranty or 400 miles, whichever one comes first. And they do offer an extended warranty, which isn't necessarily something I would personally pay for. But if that is something you care about, CarMax does have one of the better reputations in terms of extended warranties. But like any warranty, there's going to be plenty of exceptions to that rule. There's stories out there of people not necessarily getting their rear defroster covered or their power seats aren't necessarily working anymore, and they try to get that covered through the warranty and they aren't covered, and they of course get really unhappy about that. So just really make sure you understand what is actually covered, whether it be the regular warranty, the limited warranty, or the extended warranty. Make sure you have a thorough understanding of what's actually covered. And the last thing probably worth mentioning in terms of CarMax is their ability to return the vehicle within 30 days, which is actually one of the longer periods. Most car buying websites just offer 7 days, but I kind of look at it the same reason why, Walmart, Target, all these big brand stores have long return policies, because they know that they want to keep you a happy customer, because then you'll come back. So the same is true about CarMax. They want to offer that longer return period so you have a good car buying experience, so that way the next time you buy a car, or maybe you recommend it to a friend, you end up going with CarMax. Now, I will just mention as well, as far as buying a used car from places like Facebook Marketplace or Craigslist, those are websites that I would personally probably use, but that's because I'm more familiar with cars and I care more about getting the best value or the cheapest price on a car, versus if you care about those convenience factors, being able to compare, thousands of different cars on a website from the comfort of your own home, not necessarily having to meet a stranger, in some random parking lot. If those things don't appeal to you, then Craigslist and Facebook Marketplace probably aren't a great option for you. But if you don't necessarily feel too comfortable on how to buy a used car from an individual, I did do a video on that recently, so consider checking that out. But just consider subscribing to the channel in general, because those are topics I enjoy talking about, and I also cover other personal finance topics as well. Now, the next two websites I wanted to review are AutoTrader and Cars.com. And when I think about the car buying experience, I basically look at it in two extremes. You have the convenience that you're paying a bigger price for, and then you also have this lower end that you're getting a better deal from, but it doesn't have those convenience factors. You're dealing with strangers. You're usually buying from private parties. But with AutoTrader and Cars.com, I kind of look at it in this middle ground that I don't necessarily care too much for. You're paying a little bit more of a premium price in terms of compared to Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace, but you're not necessarily getting all those convenience factors that you would get with car Carvana or CarMax. I personally don't necessarily think AutoTrader or Cars.com have the most user-friendly type websites. I personally also don't like the fact that sometimes you think you're dealing with a private seller, but then it turns out you're dealing with a dealership. Those are things I don't necessarily like. The thing is sometimes you can even find the same car deals on different websites, and you can end up getting a little bit of a better deal, because let's say on AutoTrader's cases, as a seller, you're actually paying a little bit of an advertising fee to be able to sell that vehicle on that website. And on Cars.com's website, usually some of the sellers are paying a fee, so that way as a buyer, when they come to look at your car, you can pull up the Carfax for free. That's coming out of the seller's pocket, so they're paying that fee. And so in both of those cases, that means that as a seller, you're probably going to list your car at a little bit of higher price to kind of account for those fees. What that means is, as a buyer, you could probably find that exact same car with the same criteria on a different website, and probably even actually the same seller, but they're selling on a different website, and you can end up offering a little bit, you have a little bit more wiggle room in terms of negotiation price. So then that kind of begs the question on who's using those websites, and why would you use these middle ground websites? At the end of the day, it comes down to marketing, right? So whatever websites get in your face more, those are the websites that people are going to gravitate towards. So what's my personal recommendation? My personal recommendation would be either go one extreme or the other. Don't necessarily live in this middle ground. Either go for the convenience factors like a website like CarMax and buy off of them and pay that premium price, or go the other extreme, save that money, look for the best deals, and learn how to buy a car on your own, get familiar with cars so that you know how to find the best deals. And if you have questions in your specific case on a car you're looking to buy, especially if you're looking on Craigslist or looking to buy as a private seller, feel free to comment down below. This whole video came out from somebody just asking a comment on me doing a review on Carvana, so I thought I'd expand it. And same thing, I've answered plenty of people's specific car buying situations and basically give my own personal recommendations on what they should do. So if you appreciate this video at all, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel if you like personal finance, videos related to the car buying experience, or if you care about home buying experience. Those are topics I enjoy talking about a lot. Or feel free to comment down below, like I mentioned earlier. And as always, I hope to see you in the next one.